You didn't even phase. So, this is going to be a video about my League Start build. I've had an incredible amount of fun with this build. I am so happy I League started it instead of EA Totems for the 5th time. And I just wanted to share it. I wanted to make a video about it so I can look back on it and see like maybe things I could do differently as well in the future. There are a lot of things that this build utilizes and makes kind of abuses just to get an insane amount of damage. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a Minotaur, or well actually, let's run a Hydra. Well, do I have a Hydra? Let me see real quick. No, I don't. Alright, so yeah, we're on a Hydra. Let me see if I can get more monster life. The one thing on this build that you can't really... Okay, 30% increased life and 40% Ellie res. That works. So 2 tank mods on this. A lot of tank mods. The good thing about this build is we don't have to worry about curses. Any curse on the map is actually a buff to us. So we always have 20% increased damage now because of that. So that's really nice. The way this build works is you just kind of hit your flasks, hit all your flasks, throw a totem in front of you, and just start running. Hope you don't get, you know, hope you don't fall over on accident. So I wanted to show you some clear with hypothermia. This is actually clear without GMP. So this is the higher damage, less coverage sort of modality of Freezing Pulse right now. So you are getting a lot more damage, but you're getting a lot less coverage. So, did I say less damage? You're getting a lot more damage, but you're getting less coverage. So, I'll show you this essence over here. The single target, even with Freezing Pulse, is pretty nutty. So we pop our Hatred. We pop down a Front Bomb. We can curse them if we have a chance to with Assassin's Mark, and then they just die. So really easy, really simple. There are not a lot of monsters in this game that can tank the damage we do. But, so yeah, we're firing 3 projectiles because we do have Arena Splinters. And now I'm going to show you the clear with GMP. I did just buy this yesterday. I've been using a normal GMP for like the past 2 weeks in League, but I ended up dropping one from Maven and buying it from the guy who had it. So, as you can see, the clear is just insanely good when you have a GMP in your socket. It's just like probably the best link you could have. Even though you're doing less damage, you're getting just so much coverage, so much, like, really kind of don't have to worry about much because anything Freezing Pulse hits, it's going to freeze. And it's just great. It's really quality of life. I guess we could... Okay. We'll show you guys a Crucible, I guess. This is like a map showcase, so we'll showcase a map. So we get it up to about 90%, and then we pop our Hatred and our Golem. Golem gives us like 10% pass speed. Curse the guy. Got it. Okay, so we're cruising right along. There's some essence mobs. Picking up the loot. But yeah, so I wanted to show you guys the clear with both links, because they're both viable and they're both good. The problem is when you don't have a rain of splinters, it kind of sucks. You kind of are really sort of pigeonholed into using a GMP. But the good thing about using a GMP is you only have to switch one skill when you get to a boss. Map bosses don't matter. Guardians kind of do. Maven definitely does. So we're switching to Ice Spear. And with Ice Spear, you really want to position it well. So we're going to pop Hatred. We're going to put our Ice Spears like a little far away from the thing. We didn't even curse. We didn't even curse Hydra. And that's how fast she died. So now I want to kind of go over the ascendancy and kind of how we're scaling our damage on this build. So let's go over the ascendancy first, because that's kind of like the main thing like every character is centered around. So Hierophant this league got a huge buff. This Arcane Blessing node used to only give you 50% increased Arcane Surge effect, which equated, once you took these nodes, to about, I believe, 22% more damage, because you're getting like 110% increased effect, or like 150% increase. Yeah, like 160% increased effect. So it'd be like 26% more damage after all of the scaling on the Arcane Surge. But this league, they changed Arcane Surge to only grant you 10% increased cast speed instead of 10% more damage. So for every other build but Hierophant, that was a huge nerf. It's a really big nerf. But for Hierophant, we get Arcane Blessing. So what we end up doing is we have this node that gives us 20% increased Arcane Surge effect. We get this node with 20%, this node with 20%, and this node with 50 whenever we use our Divine Blessing for Hatred. We use 1,000 mana, and we get 10% increased effect per 200 mana spent up to 50. So we always are at maximum Arcane Surge effect, pretty much no matter what. And also our totems take like an insane amount of mana to cast as well. So this is pretty much always up. We're pretty much always at 110% increased Arcane Surge effect. So that is like 44% more damage, because that does scale this node. So overall, Hierophant got a 22% more damage buff, but that's not all, because it actually scales the increased cast speed and the increased mana regen as well. So that 10% cast speed actually turns into, I believe, 22% increased cast speed, which is actually a lot of cast speed. And then we also get like 66% increased mana regen, or like 63% increased mana regen, which is a lot. And Arcane Surge effect, if you go back and watch the video, the Arcane Surge buff will always be up, because our totems are always hitting something. So it's always up when we need it. It's not up when we don't. It's really, really strong buff to the build. Basically, hands down, that's what we're talking about here. So next, this is the first node you're going to take when you're leveling. You level this build with Stormbrand and Orb of Storms. You take all the cast speed nodes, you take all of the life and spell crit nodes, you take the elemental damage stuff, you take the mana, you take all of this stuff, and then once you get to maps, you kind of just gotta farm up enough currency to get a Kikazaru, but we'll go over that in a bit. The second ascendancy node you take is Conviction of Power. This is going to help you gear easier. This is going to give you an insane amount of crit chance, and it's also going to give you 16% physical damage reduction. So all in all, just a very, very strong node. The endurance charges give you 16% LE resistances all the time, and as well as the fizz reduction, this gives you about 50% increased crit chance per power charge, so that's like 200% increased crit. Really, really, really strong node. Your I think it's Merciless Lab. You're gonna take Pursuit of Faith. This is just huge quality of life and 20% more damage if you're including your totem as damage. And then Ritual of Awakening is also probably one of the best quality of life nodes in the game for any build, because this is not only giving you 25% more damage, not increased, but it gives you 2.5% mana regen per second, because we have 5 totem, right? So we're regenning an insane amount of mana, and when Arcane Surge is up, that's even more regen, right? So we're pretty much always going to be at full mana. We do have a mana flask. I don't know if it's actually even doing much. I kind of just run it for the corrupted blood, but you know, every little bit of mana we have helps. And then we also, because of this node, regen 5% of life per second. 5% life per second is a huge amount of recovery. So as you can see, my life is going down when I'm summoning these totems, and it also goes down whenever I use Hatred, because it has a life and a mana cost. I am splitting the cost of my skills between my life and my mana. This is because if I didn't, I wouldn't have enough mana to cast Hatred. We'll go over why I'm using auras in a sec, but as you can see, if I have 5 totems summoned, my life almost, you know, it goes back to full very quickly, especially with a life flask. I'm wondering if I should run Vitality or not, but that's something we'll get into. Basically, this node is just an insane amount of sustain, and also giving you an insane amount of damage. So we get 44% from Arcane Awakening, Arcane Blessing, and then we get 25% here. So that's 69% more damage from the Hierophant. Nice. When you're first leveling up, you're going to want to come up here, take this life node, take Precision, because you're going to need the Dexterity and its cast speed. You're going to take Holy Dominion for the res. You're going to take Lighted Divinity, and then you're immediately going to come up here and start taking these nodes. You're going to want to probably take the Lightning cast speed, because you're going to be using Stormbrand. And then you're also going to want to take Practical Application and Heart and Soul. And then come up here and get this cast speed, get this life, get this mana, get the reservation efficiency, pretty much mandatory on all builds. And then also the Jewel Socket, the crit chance, the mana over here, and the spell damage per max mana. So this is actually giving us, what, like 26% or 2,000, so 40%. Yeah, so this is actually giving us 40%. So that's cool. Even more increased damage. And then we come up here. While you're leveling, if you're using auras, you can actually spec into Sovereignty just to, you know, help your mana pool out, because when you're using Stormbrand, you are going to be running Herald of Thunder and Wrath just for damage. We're not going to go Mind Over Matter until we get to maps. And you're also not going to take Ancestral Bond until we switch to totems and maps. So all the totem nodes I would save for later levels, but I would take the life. I would take the Arcane Surge effect pretty much as soon as you can, because you're going to be doing your first lab around level 30, and you're going to take Arcane Blessing as your first node. So this is just an immense amount of damage really early on, and really just kind of huge quality of life, because even if you're hitting something with your own spell, you get this Arcane Surge buff. So as far as the mana masteries go, there are some really good ones in here. Obviously, the reservation efficiency is pretty important. The chance to recover 10% of mana when you use a skill. That's pretty big, especially if you have a lot of cast speed and you're self-casting something like, say, Freezing Pulse or Fireball or something. It's not really going to help with brands, so we don't take that. The damage recouped as mana is also a very good node. If you have, like, say, 30% damage recouped as mana, and you're a Mind Over Matter build, that's, like, a really good defensive layer. But I take the recover 10% of mana over 1 second when you use a guard skill, because we use Arcane Cloak. We end up, you know, taking a huge chunk of our mana away when we use that. But it immediately gives us 10% of our mana back over 1 second when we use it. So it ends up being kind of like how much mana does it take? Let me read this. Spend 64% of current mana, so that's kind of like 54%, because we get 10% of it back, right? So you can see when I use the guard skill, my mana will shoot up really fast and then slow down. Here, I'll do it again. So my mana shoots up really fast and it slows down right about there. So kind of a really nice mastery. This is more and more effective the more mana you have. So if I had like a 10,000 mana pool, like if I had a mana pool of 10,000, this would recover 1,000 mana. After we take these nodes, we come down here, get Divine Judgment. The hits have a chance to treat monster LE res as inverted. This is a very, very powerful node. I don't know what they were doing putting this in the game. This is kind of mandatory, like no matter what, on almost every build. The only builds that don't take this are like Omniscience, because they already have an insane amount of penetration, and builds that have like maybe an Elementalist that's doing like fire exposure for 40% fire exposure. But either way, it's a very powerful node. As for the Totem masteries, we are taking action speed can't be modified below base value. It doesn't make sense to scale all of this cast speed that we have, and then your totems get frozen, and they can't use that cast speed, or they get chilled, and they, like, it's 30% less cast speed, basically, is what chill means for totems. So anything that can slow your character can pretty much slow your totem. So like the delirium shit, the goo in the Fat Man's arena, there's a lot of things in the game that slow you down and slow your totems down. This ensures that we're going to have pretty much full DPS uptime no matter what, as long as our totems don't die. The second mastery we take is Global Crit Chance. Obviously, we're scaling crit in this build. This is just huge because we will pretty much always have summoned a totem recently because we want to keep our curses up. So we can go over the curse effect stuff now. When you first get to maps, you're going to want to kick a Zara ring and an imbued catalyst. You're going to need 20 of these. And you're going to imbued catalyst your Kikazaru. This will give you 72% reduced effect of curses. You get the other 30 or 28 from this Pantheon, and then you're curse immune. After you do that, you're going to need a Soul Mantle, which will give you a 7 link if it's 6 linked, and it will give you a free Spell Totem link. This means any skill you socket into this Soul Mantle will turn into a Spell Totem. So if you wanted to do, like, say, Fireball Totems, you could totally do that. Like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. You could totally do, like, you could do Crackling Lance Totems. You could do Arc Totems, which would actually scale better with your Arcane Cloak and Archmage stuff. There are a lot of good totem options. There are just like an immense amount of totems you can play as. As you can see, Fireball Totems work really well. It's like you can use any spell in a totem build. This is just a wonderful template for, I mean, this is like a tier 5 map, but it's also a level 1 gem. So overall, I've tried a lot of skills. I've tried Creeping Frost, which is actually an insane single target as well, because it shotguns. I've tried Winter Orb, which is actually really fun. I've tried Eye of Winter Totems, which is really fun. There are a lot of skills you can play on this build. You don't have to do Freezing Pulse and Ice Spear. You're not really boxed into any of that stuff. It just kind of depends on what your playstyle is and what kind of character you want to make, right? Like, the only thing I'm like showing you is a template for a build that you can switch in and out any spell in the game, and it will probably work well. The only thing it really requires is that it's a projectile, and it needs to be a spell. Okay? That's about it. That's really only it. And even some spells that aren't projectiles might work as well. Like, you could probably use Ice Nova Totems, and that would still work, maybe? We do have the, we have the Echo Shrine now, as you can see. But as you can see, like, a level 3 gem that I just bought off the vendor can clear a tier 5 map on this build, no problem. So, there's a lot of different things you can do on this build. It really doesn't have to be Freezing Pulse. Just as an example. So, next, once you get to maps in your Curse Immune, and you have your Soul Mantle, the next thing you're going to buy is a Terran's Shiver. These are 1 Chaos at League Start. This is going to buff your damage insanely well. And it's going to give you 25% block chance, which is a very nice defensive layer to have. Now, once you have your Soul Mantle, your Kikazari, your Curse Immune, and your Terran's Shiver, you're going to farm up some currency, and then very next upgrade you're going to get is probably some Dex on your gloves, and probably a ring with Curse Immunity, some cast speed, some cold damage to spells, and then you're going to look for gems with reduced curse effect. So this is how we are getting curse immunity. We have 2 jewels with reduced effect to curses, and we also have a roll of reduced effect of curses on a rare ring like this, and then maybe even 2 rare rings like this and 1 jewel with the reduced curse effect. I opted for 2 jewels, 1 ring, and then a ring with really good chaos res, cast speed, and all res, and some life and mana regen. That's just what I went for. There are other ways you can cap your curse immunity. You could use the Maven helmet and use a blue ring. It is really up to you. I wouldn't suggest using the Maven helmet because we use Heat Shiver. So I guess we could start going over the gear. Just because we are already going over some of it. Heat Shiver, okay, we should probably go over Annihilating Light first. So, after you get a fair amount of money and some good gear with a lot of resistance on it, and I mean a lot, we're going to be switching to Annihilating Light. This triples our base damage. Freezing Pulse and Ice Spear actually have a really good amount of base damage. And then we also get flat damage elsewhere, like, you know, on our Jewel. We also get it on our Crucible tree. There are a lot of places we end up getting this, and this just scales that. It triples it, right? So it's just a huge amount of damage, and then all of the increased damage that we have comes from our curses. So we could have 9 curses up at once. This is like our max amount of curses we can have on us. And we get 20% increased damage for each one of those curses from self-flagellation. So it's 180% increased damage just from this jewel. Pretty good. And then we take the increased damage a step further with Crucible. So on our tree, we have Flat Cold Dispels, which gets tripled by the effectiveness of Freezing Pulse. 330% effectiveness of added damage. So we triple that. So that's actually 6 to 15 cold damage to spells. After that, it gets tripled again by Annihilating Light. So it's not 6 to 15, it's actually 18 to 45 cold damage to spells. And then, what happens on that, after that, is we use Heat Shiver, and if the enemy is frozen, and we're getting a max chill effect, that cold damage is essentially doubled into fire damage. So we're not only doing 18 to 45 cold damage, we're doing 18 to 45 fire damage together. So we're not only tripling our damage, we're also doubling it with Heat Shiver on all frozen enemies, and we are pretty much getting max chill effect on everything. Our Ice Spear has a 100% crit chance in second form. So when you're spawning your totems, say Lily was Maven, you would actually want to spawn your totems a little farther away. So you wouldn't want to spawn them like right on the boss. If you're using Creeping Frost, you're definitely going to want to do that because they shotgun really well when they're really close to the boss. But with Ice Spear, you're going to want to put them like kind of like right here. So that they have a little bit of room to turn into the second form. And once they're in the second form, they will always be critting. And always applying the crit multi that we have from multiple sources. So, what else? What else? Where's my crit multi? So we have about 592 crit multi. In the second form, that also adds like 52, so this is more like 600 and I don't know, 40. So this isn't the real number. The real number is in POB, but I will link the POB down in the description so that you guys can see it. Also, whenever we summon a totem, we get Onslaught. This is from Sleepless Sentries. And then we also have Ancestral Echo for another 10% cast speed. So this medium cluster gives us 30% increased cast speed. And then we just have Life and Res on this jewel. Life, reduced cursed effect, cast speed, res, reduced curse effect. We have a Rain of Splinters, which is pretty important early on for clear, because if you don't have enough damage, what you can do is you can swap out GMP for Hypothermia, and you'll still have enough clear with Rain of Splinters and Freezing Pulse to do any sort of content you want in maps. You're just not going to be that tanky. So, we've gone over the gear. It would be nice if you could get a temple mod for the 50% increased damage here. But even with just our curses and that temple mod, you know, that's 230% increased damage, which is insane. Another thing that really kind of buffed this build this league is the Crucible trees. So, like I said, we have the flat damage and the cast speed. It's a really bad roll on the flat damage, but it's still, you know, insane. Like, it's really nice to have. We have 0.9 base crit for all spells. This means if we were running a Herald, the Herald itself could crit. So, this is already an insane node, especially because it doesn't have a downside. And this is kind of how we're capping our crit with Ice Spear. The next node is Freeze Duration, which helps freeze multiple enemies more efficiently with Heat Shiver. So we're going to be able to freeze enemies easier because of this. And then the final node is 25% increased damage for any charge we have, and we have -1 to all charges. So, what does this do? Since we start with 4 minimum endurance and power charges, this will bring it down to 3 of each of those. But it'll also give us 75% increased damage for each of those 3. So 150% in total. This actually makes taking these nodes right here incredibly efficient. Because not only are we getting the benefits from each of the charges that would always be there, like fizz reduction and all res and crit chance, we are now also getting 25% increased damage for each of those nodes. So for 3 nodes, we get 50% increased generic damage, as well as the bonuses of the charges themselves. So, that is insane. That is insane. And we get the minimum from here, so really all you gotta do is just take these and you'll bump back up to 4. So in total we get 200% increased damage all the time, because these are always here. So we're getting 230% from our curses and our gloves, and then another 200% from our Crucible tree. So it's 430% increased damage. And that's not including Divine Judgment. That's not including any of the stuff over here, or, you know, around here, or anything on the tree. That's just those 3 sources. So you can see how the DPS on this build gets pretty nutty. As far as our Amulet and Anoint goes, we go for Snowforged, because like I said, we're doing half cold damage and half fire damage because of Heat Shiver. So this is also another 50% increased total damage, basically. And then also we are always chilling and always igniting with Ice Spear, so it's just minus 5% to all res. Ends up being really, really nutty. And I know you guys have seen the Guardians at the start of the build, or at the start of the video here, and I just wanted to, you know, kind of showcase this build. So that is all I wanted to showcase. It's pretty much everything about the build I wanted to talk about. If you guys have any questions, you know, comment. I'll really try and, you know, respond to any questions you guys have. I will link a POB in the description as well. It's not like a completely optimized, fully min-maxed build, so the POB isn't either, but it will kind of, it'll be a good reflection of like where the build is now, and also like all the upgrades that we could get and where the build can go. Because there are still many, many upgrades we could do on this build. We don't even have a Helm Enchant. We don't even have a +2 Soul Mantle. We could get a +2 Amulet. We could get a better ring. We could get a better ring here. We could get better boots. We could get a, you know, probably a better pair of gloves. There are a lot of different things we can do on this build to get, just eke out like another 20 mil DPS, but yeah, so that's pretty much just it. That's everything. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and, I don't know, maybe like it. Maybe just press the little like button. Just down there. Just right under the video. It's right there. You press it. You know, it's not going to hurt you. And, yeah. I guess have a lovely day, evening, or afternoon. And I will see y'all in the, I guess, next video that I do. Alright, that is...
I must have time to gather.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything, I think. Alright, bye!